Lisa is a series that many of my friends have fallen in love with, either due to its heavy themes or gameplay. For years, they've badgered me to take the plunge, but time was just never on my side. I was always playing something else or working so much that I couldn't play anything, so it was about time for me to finally experience what others had considered a classic with this new and improved version of the game. Before we get into the review, we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters for making this possible. Please take a second to check out patreon.com/noisypixel to support independent game journalism. This definitive edition comes packed with two games in the Lisa series, the Painful and the Joyful. The Painful follows Brad, a man hooked on a drug called joy in a post-apocalyptic world. While aimlessly wandering and deciding whether or not to end his own life, he happens upon a baby girl. He takes her home, and while talking with his friends decides to raise her as his own. Years later, his daughter, Buddy, has been captured, beginning his long joyless journey to get her back. The Joyful follows Buddy after the events of the Painful and acts as an epilogue. This title is much shorter but explores the world and gives more insight into Brad's past. The first thing I have to say about Lisa is many times I'd felt uncomfortable. The themes set up are about abuse and the cycle that people find themselves trapped in. It attempts to show how hard it can be to break the cycle and how it can just keep those people down. That being said, this made me feel more emotionally invested in Brad and more hopeful to get a better ending for him. I even did a joyless run, handicapping Brad's stats as my first run. I needed him to become a better father than what we were shown so far. That uncomfortable feeling never left the entire time I was playing, but I knew that this was the point of the entire game. I needed to confront this feeling and choose to either keep going or quit. Needless to say, I couldn't put it down. I was hooked. The story led me along while the battles, which were inspired by Super Mario RPG, kept me entertained for an experience that I never wanted to end, even if I did find contentment when it was finally over. This version of Lisa is probably the best way to experience the title for first-time players, and gives more than enough reason for returning players to come back. The HD graphics, while nice, just ensures that it can run on modern televisions and consoles. The game looks nice, but it's still in pixel graphics, so while the updated visuals make everything more crisp, they aren't really needed. The sidebar visuals for the game are very nice, and they can change depending on the area that you're in. These sidebars can be turned off, but it gives so much character that it almost feels like they were there from the original release. This also goes along with the rumble feature that tries to make the most of each platform's controller. For example, on Switch, while I was traversing an area that had a few burly men working out, I could feel the rhythmic thumps of the music they had on in the background. These features aren't necessary by any stretch of the imagination, but they added a depth of immersion that I just hadn't felt with Rumble in years. Even though this title is almost 10 years old, this new release keeps striving to find new ways to impress players with the use of features that other modern titles just don't have. Extra content like added boss battles and stories as well as endings are a fantastic addition for the game that is already an impressive 10 hours to complete just going through the story naturally. They are integrated so well that new players won't be able to tell the difference between the added content and the original content. There's also the Painless Mode, which allows players to enjoy the story with a reduced difficulty. This mode still allows players to experience the joyless ending if obtained, as well as the various different characters that the game has to offer. However, Pain Mode has its own specific ending that cannot be seen in the easier difficulty. Pain Mode will also add more encounters or change encounters entirely, making for a truly painful experience for those that choose it. The battle system takes heavy inspiration from the Mario RPG series. Brad is a master of karate and will have players input attacks to perform combos. These combos can be selected from the menu as if they were a normal skill, but playing this way reduces the amount of damage Brad can do. His other mechanic revolves around the use of joy, either lifting him up to deal insane damage or crippling him to the point of barely even hitting targets. This created an interesting choice for me to give Brad joy to up his damage against challenging foes or try to kick the habit for the sake of his daughter. I remember looking in my inventory at the joy for one particularly rough battle, fighting the urge to take the pill for my joyless run. I managed to resist it, but it created an interesting paradox as it forced me as the player to fight Brad's addiction myself. I knew the consequences of taking it, but not taking it would hurt me in the short-term fights that were coming my way. The rest of the party members have less in-depth but still unique gimmicks that have varying levels of usefulness. My favorite was the truck driver that suffered from depression. This effect lowered all his stats permanently, but he had a truck that would run people over. Crying would raise his SP, allowing him to be self-sustaining as our enemies merely became bumps in the road for his truck. Lisa Definitive Edition is a title that I wish I'd played years ago when my friends initially wanted me to try it out. This title is impressive in a way that most modern titles struggle to achieve at times between an in-depth battle system, use of modern features, and a story that tackles darker subjects in a nuanced way. All the added content of this definitive edition makes this a game that I will now badger other friends to play, and one that I am going back to despite the fact that I just spent 2 days playing it. I'm ready to go back to a painful and joyless experience, just for one more hit. Noisy Pixel is giving Lisa Definitive Edition a 9.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all of our future content.
Noisy Pixel.